parallel to that, right, this is kind of the inverse. There's all sorts of research that's been done, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, on loneliness. Right, COVID, obviously, 2019 to 2022, still impacting today, obviously was a big spike in people's loneliness and isolation. So there's been a bunch of studies that were kind of sparked through that. Interestingly, relatively recent study on loneliness found that, actually, I'll ask you this. Let's see, what age group do you think is the most lonely?
18 to 24.
You got it. Yeah. You also probably you cheated and you looked at the notes for this podcast episode. It's 16 to 24 actually was the block that they did. But interestingly, that was in this study where they were self-reporting how lonely do you feel, how frequently do you feel lonely. This study of 55,000 people by the BBC, British Broadcasting Company, said that 40% of 16 to 24-year-olds feel very often lonely, which is compared with 27% of those who are 75 and up. So there's higher levels of loneliness among young people across cultures, across countries, across genders. And COVID obviously increased that for a lot of people. And here's the thing, that those aren't just like abstract statistics that are like, oh, I feel lonely, so I want to feel a little bit better. The reality is loneliness impacts a whole bunch of things. So it's not just a like abstract need. It also has, when you're feeling lonely, you are actually more likely to get sick. You're more likely to die earlier. You're more likely to just have basically all these risk factors. There was one study I was reading. They said someone who is significantly lonely, actually here, I'll just read the quote. This is from another BBC one. Read just the quote itself. But the evidence is clear that if you are someone who is lonely and isolated, your chance of suffering a major long-term condition, such as coronary heart disease or cancer, is also significantly increased, to the extent that it is almost as big of a risk factor as smoking. So if you're someone who is consistently lonely and isolated, it's as bad for your health as smoking is, which obviously we know there's been plenty of stuff that's come out. Smoking is not great for you. There's plenty of people who do it, but it's not good for you. So this is not like an abstract, like, oh, this is just so people feel a little bit better. When you are lonely, when you're isolated, when you don't have real friends, it has real tangible health benefits, societal impact, and all this stuff. That's why we got to talk about friendship.
You know, as you read out those studies and as you say those numbers, sometimes even to us it's like, oh, that's just a number. No, those are real human beings, right? Those are real people, and that person might be you, right?
Yeah.
So when we're saying that, when we're reading that, it's like, man, I would think on my side, it's like, well, Lucas, you don't feel what I'm feeling. I'm hurting. I'm still alone. You telling me this doesn't help my situation at all, right?
Yeah.
And
now I just feel worse because I'm isolated, and now I might as well be smoking.
Yeah. And the point is, like, hey, go first then, right?
Yeah.
Go bring someone in your life. Ask for help. Or, hey, specifically, I know we hope that if you're not a believer, that, man, you stay in this podcast. This is also just for you too, but we're talking to believers too. Go to your church, right? Your church. I don't think the church has done a great job helping people do life together, right? And that's what the church is supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's what the church is, right? That's the body. It's not a building, it's the body, right? So we tell you this not to make you feel bad or not to shame you or anything like that. Say, hey, we see this too. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.